They told her father died in an accident. They told her the case was closed. They told her the dog was no longer trustworthy. Everyone in the courtroom believed the official story. The officers, the reports, the closed case. Everyone except a retired police K9. As a 9-year-old girl stepped forward, the dog suddenly froze, his body rigid, eyes locked on one man no one else questioned. The room went silent. No barking, no aggression. But no one explained why the dog reacted the same way every time one specific officer entered the room. They said the dog was unstable, dangerous, unreliable. But what he did next exposed something far more dangerous, a lie buried for 10 years. Stay with us, because this story unfolds in a way you won't expect. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe so you don't miss stories like this. And tell me, where are you watching from today? Drop your country in the comments. I love seeing how far these moments travel. Everyone in the courtroom believed the officer on the stand. Everyone except the dog. The room was silent, heavy with expectation, as a little girl stood near the witness rail, her shoes barely touching the floor. She was small, dressed in black, clutching memories she didn't know how to name. Across from her sat her late father's retired police K9, older now, graying, labeled unstable, aggressive, unreliable. The words had followed him for years. Authorities insisted the past should stay buried, the case closed, the truth settled. They told the girl her father's death was an accident, a tragedy without answers. But something in her chest never accepted that explanation. As she stepped closer, the dog lifted his head, body stiffening, eyes locking on a presence no one else seemed to notice. A low tension rippled through the room. They warned her about the dog. No one warned them about her questions. Lily heard the warnings long before she understood them. Adults spoke in careful tones, as if danger could be softened by volume. They said the dog was unpredictable, that he wasn't like other dogs, that he had been through things no one should ask about. They said it while standing between Lily and the hallway that led to him, as if words alone could build a wall. Lily was 9 years old, small for her age, with dark eyes that watched more than they spoke. She nodded when adults talked, the way children do when they know disagreement will only end the conversation faster. But inside her, questions gathered like stones in her pockets, growing heavier each day. Her father's death had changed the shape of her world overnight. One evening he had promised to be home before bedtime, his voice warm and certain. The next morning, the house was full of people who smelled like perfume and grief. They brought food, spoke in whispers, and touched her shoulder too gently. Lily learned the word accident, before she learned how to explain the hollow feeling in her chest. An accident meant no one was to blame. An accident meant there were no answers to look for. Adults repeated the word until it felt rehearsed, like a line everyone had agreed on. Lily repeated it too. Even though it never settled right inside her, grief did not arrive for Lily in loud sobs or dramatic moments. It came quietly. It sat beside her at the breakfast table where her father's chair remained empty. It followed her to school, where teachers smiled too often and classmates avoided her eyes. At night, it curled up beside her bed, whispering questions she didn't know how to ask aloud. She missed her father in small, aching ways. The sound of his boots by the door. The way he smelled like coffee and cold air. The way he used to tell her stories about work without ever making them scary. He always said the dog was the bravest partner he'd ever had. That was how Lily first thought of the dog. Not as a threat, not as a problem, but as part of her father. After the funeral, she asked where the dog was. Adults exchanged looks and changed the subject. They told her he had been retired, that he was being handled, that it wasn't something she needed to worry about. Lily learned that handled meant hidden. It meant locked doors and quiet hallways. It meant something people didn't want children asking about. Naturally, that made her want to see him more. The first time Lily passed the room where the dog stayed, she felt it before she saw him. A heaviness in the air, a stillness that didn't feel empty. She slowed her steps, pretending to adjust her shoe, just to look through the glass. Inside, the dog lay on a mat, his body large but controlled, his head resting on his paws. Gray touched his muzzle, but his posture was disciplined, almost formal. His eyes were open, watching the doorway as if he expected someone to appear. When Lily's gaze met his, something shifted. The dog lifted his head slightly, ears angling forward. He did not move closer. He did not growl. He simply looked at her, steady and focused. Lily returned the next day, and the day after that. Each time, someone tried to stop her, gently at first, then more firmly. "You shouldn't be here," they told her. "That dog isn't safe." Lily listened, then waited until they were distracted. She learned the building's rhythms quickly. When doors opened, when people left their posts, she wasn't trying to break rules. She was trying to understand something no one would explain. Each visit, the dog noticed her immediately. His body didn't tense with aggression. It softened, just enough to be noticed if you were looking closely. Lily always was. She began to talk to him in a low voice, careful not to attract attention. She told him her name. She told him she missed her dad. She told him people said he was dangerous now, and that didn't make sense to her. The dog listened without interruption, his breathing slow, his eyes never leaving her face. Lily felt something ease inside her during those moments. She wasn't being corrected. She wasn't being reassured with empty words. She was simply being heard. People kept telling Lily to move on. Family members said it with kindness. Teachers said it with concern. Even strangers said it, as if grief followed a schedule children were expected to keep. Lily tried to do what they asked. She smiled when she was supposed to. She did her homework. She played with friends. But every time she walked past the dog's door, her steps slowed. He was real in a way nothing else felt real anymore. He was not pretending everything was fine. He was not rushing to forget. Lily began to notice things others missed. When her father's name was spoken nearby, the dog's ears twitched. When certain officers walked past, his body grew rigid. When the word accident floated through the hall, his breathing changed, shallow and sharp. These were small reactions, easy to dismiss. Lily did not dismiss them. Children are good at noticing patterns when adults are busy ignoring them. The more she watched, the more certain she became that the dog remembered something everyone else had agreed not to. She didn't yet know what that something was. She only knew that the dog was not dangerous. He was waiting. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for someone who wouldn't look away just because they were told to. Lily returned again and again, drawn not by defiance but by trust. They warned her about the dog, never realizing the real threat was the truth she was quietly uncovering, step by careful step, guided by questions no one else dared to ask. He was trained to detect danger. They said his instincts were gone. The words followed him everywhere now, spoken in low voices and written in reports that no one questioned anymore. To those who didn't know his past, he was just an old police dog with a problem attached to his name. To those who did know, he was a reminder of something easier to forget. The dog lay quietly in his assigned space, body still powerful despite the stiffness that came with age. His eyes remained sharp, alert to every sound and movement, even when his body rested. Nothing about him suggested unpredictability. Nothing about him felt broken. Years earlier, his name had been spoken with respect. In training fields and briefing rooms, instructors praised his discipline and focus. From the beginning, he was different. He did not rush commands or act on impulse. He watched first. He listened. Trainers noticed how quickly he learned not just what to do, but why. He responded to subtle shifts in tone and posture, often anticipating commands before they were fully given. Where other dogs relied on repetition, he relied on understanding. That made him invaluable. On duty, he was flawless. He moved through crowded streets and dark buildings with the same calm precision. Noise never startled him. Chaos never confused him. He detected threats early, weapons hidden deep, dangers masked behind confidence. More than once, his hesitation saved lives. Officers learned to trust his pauses as much as his actions. When he stopped, they stopped. When he refused to move forward, they listened. His record reflected it all: successful operations, commendations, quiet acknowledgments from people who understood what kind of dog he was. He was not aggressive. He was careful. His handler trusted him completely. They worked as one, communicating without words when necessary. The dog learned the rhythm of his handler's breath, the tension in his shoulders, the way stress settled into his stance. In return, the handler trusted the dog's instincts even when they conflicted with orders. That trust shaped every mission they survived together. It also shaped the night everything changed. After the incident, the language shifted. Reports became vague. Praise disappeared. The dog was suddenly described as volatile, unpredictable, difficult to manage. Evaluations were ordered. Observations were twisted. A moment of hesitation was reframed as refusal. A pause was called aggression. The same instincts that once earned trust were now labeled dangerous. No one asked why a dog with a spotless record would change overnight. It was easier to assign blame than to reopen questions. Retirement followed quickly. There was no ceremony, no farewell. Just forms, signatures, and silence. He was removed from active duty and separated from the handler who understood him best. At first, the dog waited. He sat alert by the door, ears angled forward, ready for the next command. Days passed. Then weeks. The routine vanished, replaced by stillness. His posture remained disciplined, but something inside him settled into patience rather than readiness. Authorities explained the decision in careful terms: safety concerns, liability issues, risk management. Words designed to sound reasonable. Calling the dog aggressive served a purpose. It justified isolation, it discouraged visits, it silenced curiosity. If the dog was unreliable, then anything he might signal could be ignored. Instinct became inconvenient. Loyalty became a threat. Staff members noticed the contradiction. The dog did not lunge or snap. He obeyed commands without resistance. He remained calm even when startled, but their observations never traveled far. Once a label is applied, evidence tends to bend around it. The dog became the one no one wanted anymore, avoided not because of behavior, but because of what he represented. He was a living reminder of an unfinished story. As time passed, age softened his movements but not his awareness. His hearing dulled slightly. His muzzle grayed. But his eyes never stopped watching. He learned the building's rhythms the way he once learned patrol routes. Footsteps meant different things depending on speed and weight. Voices carried truth or tension in ways humans often missed. He remained exactly what he had been trained to be: attentive, patient, discerning. When Lily first appeared, the dog noticed immediately. Children moved differently. They carried emotions openly, without layers of control. Her grief was quiet but heavy, familiar in a way he recognized. He watched her from his place, sensing honesty rather than threat. His body did not tense. His instincts did not warn. Instead, something inside him settled, as if recognizing a purpose he had been waiting for. They said his instincts were gone because admitting otherwise would have meant admitting the past was unfinished. It was easier to believe the dog had failed than to question the story built around him. But instinct does not disappear. It waits. It adapts. It remembers. The dog carried memory not as anger, but as awareness. He remembered commands given and commands withheld. He remembered voices raised in confusion. He remembered being ordered to stand down when every part of him knew something was wrong. Now, as Lily stood quietly near him, he felt the same clarity he always had. Nothing inside him was broken. Nothing had ever been wrong. He was still what he had always been: a detector of danger, a keeper of truth. The dog no one wanted anymore had simply been waiting for someone willing to listen. The report said accident. The dog remembered something else. Lily had heard the story so many times that the words felt worn smooth, like stones rubbed together until all their edges disappeared. An accident during an operation. Unforeseen circumstances, tragic outcome. Adults spoke those phrases as if they explained everything. But whenever Lily heard them, her chest tightened, and whenever the dog heard them, his body reacted in ways no one could ignore if they were paying attention. The past lived inside him, intact and unaided. The day her father never came home began like any other workday, at least on the surface. Lily remembered the morning clearly, because grief has a way of sharpening small details. Her father had knelt to tie her shoe, even though she insisted she could do it herself. He smelled like coffee and cold air, his uniform crisp, his voice calm. He promised her pancakes the next morning. He always promised he would come back. When the door closed behind him, Lily had waved from the window until his car disappeared down the street. That was the last ordinary moment of her childhood. The flashback unfolded differently inside the dog's memory. He remembered the tension long before the explosion, the way voices crackled over radios, overlapping and rushed. The way his handler's grip tightened on the leash, subtle but unmistakable. They were moving through an industrial area, dark and cluttered, lights flickering overhead. The dog's senses were sharp, taking in scents that didn't belong, sounds that didn't align with the plan. His body stiffened once, then again. He slowed, instinct urging caution. Commands came quickly. Too quickly. Move forward. Stay close. The dog hesitated just long enough to signal concern. His handler noticed. He always did. For a moment, everything paused, balanced on the edge of decision. Then another voice cut through the radio, louder, more insistent. Orders were repeated. The dog moved, but unease stayed coiled inside him. The explosion shattered everything. Sound became pressure, light became pain. The ground shook violently, throwing bodies and debris in every direction. The dog was knocked sideways, ears ringing, senses overwhelmed. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking. Shouts blurred together. He scrambled to his feet, instinct driving him toward his handler. He found him amid the chaos, injured but conscious, reaching for him with shaking hands. The dog pressed close, grounding, protective, ready to follow any command. But the commands never came. Instead, new voices shouted conflicting orders. Retreat, hold position. Stand down. The dog froze, torn between training and instinct. His handler tried to speak, but his voice was lost in the noise. Someone pulled the dog back, hands rough, urgent. The leash tightened. The dog resisted for the first time in his career, planting his feet, straining forward. Everything in him screamed that something was wrong. That leaving was wrong. The moment passed too quickly. The dog was dragged away as medics rushed in. Sirens wailed. Smoke swallowed the scene. By the time the dog was released again, his handler was gone, loaded into an ambulance that disappeared into the night. The dog lunged after it, barking once, sharp and desperate. A command cut through the air, final and absolute. Stand down. The dog obeyed because obedience had been bred into his bones. It was the last command he would ever regret following. Back in the present, Lily spoke her father's name softly near the kennel. The dog's ears twitched. His head lifted slowly. His breathing changed, shallow and quick, as if the past rushed back all at once. Lily didn't know the details of that night, but she felt the shift. When an officer nearby repeated the word accident, the dog growled low in his throat, a sound filled not with anger, but protest. It was the first time Lily heard him make any noise at all. People reacted immediately. Tension spiked. Hands reached for leashes. Someone scolded Lily gently, telling her not to upset the dog. But Lily wasn't afraid. She watched closely as the dog's body language spoke louder than words. He wasn't lashing out. He wasn't confused. He was responding to memory. When another command was given, a simple one meant to settle him, the dog did something no one expected. He didn't move. It was a small act of defiance, barely noticeable, but it landed heavily in the room. A dog trained for perfect discipline refusing a command was unheard of. The handler repeated it, firmer this time. Still, the dog remained still, eyes fixed, muscles tense. Lily felt her heart race. She didn't understand everything yet, but she understood this. The dog was choosing truth over obedience. Later, Lily would replay that moment again and again. The way adults looked at each other, the way the room felt suddenly unbalanced. She would realize that the dog's refusal wasn't aggression. It was memory refusing to be rewritten. The report said accident, but the dog remembered orders that didn't make sense, warnings that were ignored, and a moment when instinct had been silenced. That memory lived inside him, waiting. And now, because of Lily, it was beginning to surface. When everyone repeats the same story, it's usually because someone wrote it. Lily didn't know when that story had been written, only that it followed her everywhere. It lived in careful sentences and sympathetic looks, in the way adults spoke, as if the past were fragile glass that might shatter if questioned. The accident narrative was smooth, practiced, and unchanging. It sounded the same whether it came from police officials in pressed uniforms or family friends sitting at the kitchen table with cups of cooling tea. The words flowed easily, as if memorized. Tragic accident, line of duty, nothing suspicious, nothing more to say. At the station, senior officers spoke with calm authority. They referenced reports and procedures, dates and decisions, assuring Lily's relatives that the investigation had been thorough. Everything had been reviewed, all angles considered. The case was closed for good reason. They said it with confidence, the kind meant to end conversations before they began. Lily watched their faces closely. Some looked tired. Some looked relieved. None looked uncertain. That certainty made her uneasy. Family friends echoed the same explanation. These were people who had known her father for years, who had once spoken proudly of his work and his integrity. Now they repeated the official version without hesitation, as if agreement itself were a form of loyalty. At gatherings, Lily heard the same phrases recycled, softened with concern. It was just one of those things. At least he didn't suffer. He'd want you to be happy. Each sentence felt like a door closing quietly in her face. Lily noticed how questions changed the mood. When she asked about the timeline, voices slowed. When she asked who had been in charge that night, eyes shifted. When she asked why her father had been sent in when things already seemed unstable, the room grew tense. Adults reminded her gently that she was young, that some things were complicated, that reopening the past would only cause pain. Lily wondered whose pain they were protecting. The dog reacted every time the story was told. It wasn't dramatic, but it was unmistakable if you paid attention. When the word accident was spoken, his ears flattened and his body stiffened. When certain officers' names were mentioned, his low growl vibrated deep in his chest. It wasn't anger. It was recognition. Lily watched him closely, learning the language of his reactions the way she once learned her father's moods. The dog never reacted randomly. His responses followed patterns. One afternoon, as an official explained the sequence of events again, Lily repeated the names under her breath, testing what she'd noticed. When she whispered her father's name, the dog lifted his head, alert and focused. When she said the name of a supervisor who appeared often in conversations, the dog rose slowly to his feet, tail rigid. When the location of the operation was mentioned, an industrial yard near the river, the dog let out a low sound that caused several people to pause mid-sentence. The room fell quiet. Someone laughed nervously and blamed nerves. Lily knew better. Adults began to frame the dog as the problem. They said he was agitated because of Lily. That children carried emotional energy animals could sense. They suggested it wasn't healthy for her to be around him. The word, unstable resurfaced, louder this time, backed by concern rather than authority. Lily noticed how quickly the narrative shifted when the dog's reactions disrupted it. Instead of questioning the story, they questioned the witness. Family friends urged Lily to focus on healing. They said the dog was a reminder of trauma, not truth. They encouraged her to remember the good times and let the rest go. Lily listened politely, then watched the dog as he reacted again when the word "stand down" slipped into a conversation. The reaction was immediate and intense. His growl was deeper this time, sustained, filled with something close to urgency. Several adults stepped back instinctively. Someone tightened their grip on a leash. Lily's heart pounded not with fear, but with certainty. That phrase mattered. The officials noticed it too. Meetings were held behind closed doors. Lily overheard fragments of conversation about risk and liability. They discussed relocating the dog, limiting access, minimizing exposure. They said his behavior was unpredictable. Lily had been watching him for weeks. Nothing about his behavior surprised her anymore. He reacted to lies. He reacted to omissions. He reacted to names and places that didn't belong in a simple accident. Lily began to keep track of everything. She carried a small notebook, writing down words that caused reactions and those that didn't. She noted names that made the dog tense and names that meant nothing to him. She marked locations, phrases, tones of voice. Over time, a picture began to form. The story everyone agreed on avoided these details. It skipped over moments that mattered. It simplified what had been complex and erased what had been inconvenient. The more Lily listened, the more she understood that agreement didn't always mean truth. Sometimes it meant fear of consequences, sometimes it meant protecting reputations, and sometimes it meant protecting someone who had written the story in the first place. The dog growled softly as another official spoke. His eyes locked on the hallway where a familiar figure had just passed. Lily followed his gaze, her questions growing sharper, more focused. She didn't confront anyone yet. She didn't raise her voice or accuse. She simply watched and listened, trusting the patterns that revealed themselves. The story everyone agreed on relied on repetition and silence. The dog relied on memory and instinct. One had been carefully constructed. The other had been trained through years of truth. As Lily stood beside him, refusing to look away, she realized the most dangerous thing in the room was no longer the dog. It was the lie everyone kept repeating, hoping no one would notice the cracks. He didn't bark. He blocked her path. The warning came quietly, so quietly that most people missed it. Lily was walking down the side corridor of the building, following a familiar route she had taken dozens of times before. The hallway led toward a secured storage wing, a place adults rarely mentioned but often passed by with hurried steps. Lily had overheard the location referenced in fragments: file room, evidence annex, old operations storage. Every time it came up, the dog reacted. Not violently, not loudly, just enough to make Lily's skin prickle with certainty. That afternoon, the hallway was empty. The air smelled faintly of dust and disinfectant. Lily walked slowly, her shoes barely making a sound. She wasn't sure why she was going there, only that something pulled her forward. Halfway down the corridor, she felt movement behind her. The dog followed at a measured pace, his steps soft despite his size. She didn't look back until she felt him stop in front of her. He positioned himself squarely in her path. No growl, no bark, just presence. Lily froze. She looked up at him, heart pounding. His body was rigid, alert in a way she had never seen before. His ears were forward, his eyes locked not on her, but on the door at the end of the hall. When Lily took a tentative step to the side, he mirrored her movement, blocking her again. Gently, deliberately. His message was unmistakable. Do not go there. Adults rounded the corner moments later. Someone laughed nervously and reached for the leash, apologizing on the dog's behalf. They said he was confused, overstimulated, protective. Lily didn't argue. She watched as the dog finally stepped aside only after the door at the end of the hallway was locked again. The moment passed quickly, dismissed as nothing, but Lily felt the weight of it settle deep in her chest. That wasn't confusion. That was a warning. Later that night, Lily replayed the scene in her mind. The dog had never behaved like that before. He hadn't reacted to her movement, but to the destination. That realization led her back to the stories her father once told her, the ones about training days and long nights. She remembered him explaining how police dogs were taught to read more than physical threats. A good canine, he had said once, smiling, doesn't just look for danger. He looks for what doesn't belong. The memory shifted, and the story deepened. In training, the dog had been taught to identify deception long before he learned controlled aggression. Trainers placed him in simulated environments filled with distractions, raised voices, sudden movements, false urgency. The goal was not to provoke him, but to see what he ignored. He learned that real danger often hid behind calm tones and confident words. He was trained to notice inconsistencies in scent, behavior, and rhythm. Fear smelled different from guilt. Panic sounded different from control. His handler understood this better than anyone. During exercises, the dog often paused when others rushed forward. Trainers initially corrected him, then realized his hesitation was deliberate. He wasn't failing. He was assessing. When evaluators reviewed footage, they saw it clearly. The dog consistently identified the real threat, not the loudest person in the room, but the one trying hardest to appear normal. That skill made him invaluable in interrogations and high-risk operations. It also made him dangerous to people who relied on lies. Back in the present, Lily began connecting pieces she hadn't known how to name before. The hallway, the locked door, the dog's reaction, the way officials avoided talking about certain rooms and records. She realized the dog hadn't been protecting her from physical harm. He had been protecting her from knowledge someone didn't want uncovered. The next day, Lily tested her theory carefully. She walked toward another area connected to the investigation, a side entrance near the garage where old vehicles were kept. The dog followed again, but this time he remained calm. No tension, no blocking. She stopped, then turned back toward the secured wing. The dog's posture changed instantly. He stepped forward, blocking her path once more, eyes fixed, breath steady. Lily's heart raced. This wasn't random. It was precise. Adults noticed again. Their reactions were sharper this time. They tightened control, reduced Lily's access, and spoke about the dog in firmer tones. They said his behavior was concerning, that it reinforced why he couldn't be trusted. Lily saw the pattern clearly now. Every time the dog reacted near something tied to the official story, he was labeled aggressive. Every time he stayed calm, no one commented. The warning wasn't dangerous. The truth was, that night, Lily sat on her bed and whispered to the dog through the cracked doorway where he rested nearby. She thanked him, though she didn't fully understand why. She felt safer knowing he was there, guarding something unseen. For the first time since her father's death, Lily didn't feel lost. She felt guided. The dog lay still, ears twitching at the sound of her voice. He had followed countless commands in his life. This one came from instinct alone. Protect, not by force, by prevention. By standing in the way of a lie long enough for someone brave enough to notice. The dog's first warning had been silent, easily dismissed by those who wanted comfort over truth. But Lily heard it clearly. And once a warning is understood, it cannot be forgotten. The dog had been trained to forget many things: loud noises, sudden movement, pain, fear. He had learned to obey commands, even when every instinct in his body urged him to do the opposite. But there were some things no training was ever meant to erase. Some things were carved too deeply, written not into memory but into purpose itself. The night of the final investigation lived inside him with sharp clarity. It was not a blur, not a fading shadow like humans described trauma. For the dog it was a sequence of signals, scents, sounds, and decisions that never stopped replaying. He remembered the way the air changed before they arrived at the site, heavy with unfamiliar chemicals and tension. He remembered how his handler's heartbeat quickened beneath his palm as they crouched behind cover. He remembered the voices on the radio, overlapping, rushed, carrying urgency without clarity. This was not a routine operation. The dog knew that before any human said it aloud. His training had taught him to read what people missed. Micro pauses in speech, forced calm, the absence of fear where fear should exist. As they moved closer, his instinct surged, warning him that something was wrong. Not dangerous in the obvious sense. Dangerous in the hidden one. The kind that came from deception, not violence. He slowed his pace deliberately, signaling caution the way he had been trained to do. His handler noticed immediately. Years of partnership had taught them to trust each other beyond words. The handler's hand tightened slightly on the leash, a question without language. The dog responded by holding position, ears angled forward, nose working overtime. He detected scents that didn't match the scene: fresh metal, accelerant, human sweat layered with something sharp and intentional. This was not an accident waiting to happen. This was something arranged. Then the command came. Advance. The dog hesitated. It was only a fraction of a second, but it mattered. His handler felt it and hesitated too. That pause, brief and fragile, was the last moment where the truth had a chance to stop what followed. Another voice cut through the radio, louder, more authoritative. Orders were repeated. The dog was trained to obey the handler first, the chain of command second. But that night, those lines blurred. Confusion crept in where clarity should have been. The explosion came without warning. Sound became pressure, light became pain. The ground shook and the dog was thrown sideways, his senses overwhelmed but not lost. He scrambled back to his feet immediately, instincts overriding shock. Smoke filled the air, thick and choking, carrying the sharp smell of burning chemicals and blood. Through the chaos, he found his handler. Injured, disoriented, but alive. The dog pressed close, positioning himself instinctively between his handler and the unknown. Then came the order that changed everything. Stand down. The dog heard it clearly. It was not shouted in panic. It was spoken with control. Final, absolute. Every part of him resisted. His training screamed that something was wrong, that leaving his handler in that moment violated every rule he had learned through trust and experience. But obedience was not optional. It was built into him, reinforced through years of conditioning. He froze, torn between instinct and command. Someone grabbed his leash and pulled him back. He resisted, muscles straining, feet digging into the ground. It was the first time in his career he had actively fought restraint. The leash tightened painfully, and the command was repeated, sharper this time. Stand down. The dog obeyed. The decision split something inside him that never fully healed. He watched as his handler was pulled away, swallowed by smoke and flashing lights. Sirens drowned out everything else. The dog barked once, a sharp sound of protest and confusion, before being forced into a vehicle. By the time the doors closed, the scene was already being rewritten. Medics moved in. Officers redirected traffic. The story began forming before the truth had time to breathe. In the days that followed, the dog sensed the shift immediately. His handler was gone. The voices around him changed. Praise turned into scrutiny. Questions turned into accusations. His hesitation, once respected, was now examined as failure. His resistance to the stand-down order was quietly documented as aggression. The same instincts that had saved lives were reframed as liability. The dog did not understand politics or cover-ups, but he understood when truth was being pushed aside. He understood that he had been present for something he was never meant to question. He had followed a command that went against everything he was trained to protect. That contradiction became the core of his memory. Years later, when Lily spoke her father's name, the memory surged back with full force. When she repeated phrases she overheard, especially "stand down," the dog's body reacted before his mind could stop it. Growls escaped his chest, not out of anger, but refusal. Refusal to accept a lie as truth. Refusal to forget what his instincts had known all along. This was what the dog had been trained to never forget. Not faces, not locations, not even commands. He remembered the moment when obedience had cost a life. He remembered the warning signs that were ignored. He remembered being silenced. Canines are trained to balance instinct and command, but instinct exists for a reason. It is the last defense when systems fail. The dog understood that now in a way training manuals never covered. His purpose had never been to attack. It had been to protect. Sometimes that meant force. Sometimes it meant hesitation. And sometimes it meant carrying the truth quietly until someone was brave enough to listen. Lily was listening now. The dog felt it in the way she watched him, in the patience of her questions. He had waited years for that moment. He had been trained to never forget. And he hadn't. The dog hadn't growled in years, until he saw him. The sound was low, almost lost beneath the hum of conversation, but it carried weight. Lily felt it more than she heard it, a vibration that traveled through the floor and into her chest. She looked down at the dog just as his body stiffened, muscles drawing tight beneath his fur. His eyes locked onto a man standing near the doorway, a man everyone else greeted with easy familiarity. Lauder followed him. Respect did too. He wore it like a uniform. The supervisor moved with confidence, the kind that came from years of authority and being trusted without question. He shook hands, exchanged quiet jokes, nodded at officers who straightened instinctively in his presence. People spoke his name with admiration, often pairing it with words like dependable and honorable. Lily had heard his name before, always in passing, always spoken carefully. She had never paid him much attention until that moment. The dog didn't look away. His gaze tracked the supervisor's every movement, slow and deliberate. His ears flattened, then angled forward again. Lily had learned this language now. This wasn't confusion, it wasn't fear, it was focus. When the supervisor took a step closer, the dog's growl deepened, just enough to be unmistakable. Conversations nearby faltered. Someone cleared their throat. A handler reached instinctively for the leash. "He's sensitive to new people," someone said quickly, offering an explanation that smoothed over discomfort. The supervisor smiled, unfazed. He didn't approach the dog, but his eyes flicked toward him briefly, assessing. Lily caught that look. It was too quick, too controlled. The dog caught it too. His posture shifted, weight distributing evenly, ready without being aggressive. Lily's heart began to race. This wasn't the first time the supervisor had appeared, Lily realized. He had been present at meetings, at quiet discussions behind closed doors. Each time, the dog had reacted subtly. A stiffening, a low sound. Lily had noticed but hadn't yet connected it. Now, seeing them in the same space, the pattern snapped into focus. The dog watched the supervisor the way he watched doors and corners, the way he watched threats. Lily did something she had never done before. She reached into her pocket and turned on her phone's camera, angling it down, pretending to fidget. She didn't know exactly what she was recording, only that she needed proof. Children often sense when adults will deny what is obvious. Lily had learned that lesson early. She kept the phone steady as the supervisor spoke with others, laughing, gesturing, completely at ease. The dog's reactions were impossible to ignore now that Lily was looking for them. When the supervisor raised his voice slightly, the dog's growl returned. When the man mentioned the investigation years ago, even in passing, the dog stood, tail rigid, eyes locked. A handler tried to calm him with a quiet command. The dog obeyed halfway, lowering himself but never breaking eye contact. Lily captured it all, her hands shaking slightly. Later, when the supervisor left the room, the dog relaxed almost immediately. His body softened, his breathing slowed. The change was so sudden it made Lily's stomach twist. This wasn't stress from crowds or noise. This was specific, intentional. Lily replayed the footage later in her room, watching the way the dog's posture changed the instant the man appeared. She replayed it again and again, her understanding deepening with each viewing. Lily began to test it carefully. She recorded the dog around different people, different names, different conversations. Most of the time, he remained calm, observant but relaxed. But whenever the supervisor's name was spoken or his footsteps echoed nearby, the dog reacted the same way. Tension focus. A low warning sound that never escalated, never softened. It was as consistent as a heartbeat. Adults dismissed Lily's concerns when she tried to explain. They said animals could sense authority, that the dog was reacting to uniforms, to energy. Lily nodded, then kept recording. She knew the difference between general unease and targeted recognition. The dog wasn't reacting to power. He was reacting to memory. One afternoon, Lily overheard the supervisor speaking about her father. His tone was gentle, practiced. He expressed regret, spoke about sacrifice and duty. Lily watched from across the room as the dog rose to his feet slowly, deliberately, placing himself between Lily and the man without making a sound. It was a protective stance, unmistakable to anyone trained to see it. The supervisor noticed this time. His smile faltered, just for a second. Lily caught that moment on camera too. From that day on, Lily kept her phone with her always. She recorded quietly, methodically, building a collection of moments adults overlooked or chose to ignore. The dog became her guide, his reactions pointing her toward truths buried beneath polite conversation. He didn't bark or lunge. He didn't need to. His body told the story clearly enough. The supervisor remained untouchable in everyone else's eyes, a pillar of the department, a trusted voice. But Lily saw him differently now. She saw the way his presence changed the air. She saw the way the dog never stopped watching him, and she understood something important. Trust, when unexamined, could become a shield. The dog knew that. He had learned it the hard way. As Lily slipped her phone back into her pocket, she met the dog's eyes. They shared a quiet understanding. He would keep watching. She would keep recording. Together, they were no longer alone with the truth. The truth didn't come from a witness. It came from a pattern. Lily realized that late one night, sitting cross-legged on her bed with her phone glowing softly in the dark. The house was quiet, the kind of quiet that made thoughts louder. On the screen in front of her, the dog's reactions played over and over again. A stiffened posture, a low growl, eyes fixed with unmistakable intent. Each clip by itself could be dismissed. Together they formed something undeniable. Lily paused the video and rubbed her eyes. She wasn't looking for a confession. She wasn't waiting for someone to admit guilt. She was doing what no one else had bothered to do. She was paying attention. Adults liked clean answers and single moments that proved everything at once. But truth, Lily was learning, often revealed itself slowly through repetition. She started organizing everything. Dates, times, places. She wrote them down carefully in her notebook, her handwriting small but determined. She matched her recordings with what she could find online, old news articles, public reports, statements released years ago. Many of them said the same thing in different words. Accident. Explosion during operation. No wrongdoing found. But when Lily placed them side by side, small inconsistencies appeared. A time stamp that didn't align. A vehicle listed in one report but missing in another. A name mentioned once and never again. The dog lay nearby, head resting on his paws, eyes open. Lily spoke softly as she worked, as if thinking aloud helped her think straighter. When she mentioned certain details, the dog's ears twitched. When she said certain names, he lifted his head. Lily noted those reactions too. They weren't random. They confirmed what she was already seeing on the page. Bodycam footage became the turning point. Lily had overheard adults mention that cameras had been malfunctioning the night of the incident. That explanation had always bothered her. One malfunction made sense. Several did not. With the help of an older cousin who knew how to search public records, Lily found fragments of footage that had been released but rarely reviewed. The clips were short and grainy, but they showed enough. She watched officers moving through the site, voices raised, confusion spreading. She watched her father briefly, calm despite the tension, giving instructions. Then the footage cut abruptly. Another clip started from a different angle. earlier than it should have been. Lily replayed it again and again until she noticed something strange. A vehicle parked where it shouldn't have been. Its number plate was partially visible, blurred but distinct enough to recognize later. Lily froze. She rewound the clip, heart pounding. She had seen that number before. Not on the footage but in her notes. It appeared in a logistics report tied to the supervisor's unit. The vehicle had been reassigned months before the incident, officially nowhere near the site that night. Officially, her hands trembled as she cross-checked the detail. Another report referenced a similar vehicle but listed a different plate number. Close enough to be a typo, too close to be coincidence. Lily felt a chill crawl up her spine. Patterns don't lie. People do. The dog stood suddenly, moving closer to the screen as Lily replayed the footage again. When the vehicle appeared, his body tensed, a low sound vibrating in his chest. Lily's breath caught. She whispered, "You remember that too, don't you?" The dog didn't look at her. His focus stayed on the screen, as if the memory lived there. Over the next few days, Lily worked quietly, carefully. She didn't confront anyone. She didn't share her findings yet. She gathered more pieces, old reports with sections redacted, audio transcripts that skipped crucial moments, dispatch logs that showed delays with no explanation. Every time she found something that didn't fit, she tested it against the dog's reactions. Every time they aligned, she noticed something else too. Certain details had been repeated often in official accounts, almost excessively. Other details appeared once and vanished. The repeated details were meant to anchor belief. The missing ones were where the truth hid. Lily highlighted those gaps in her notebook, circling them, connecting them with lines like a map only she could see. Adults dismissed her when she asked vague questions, so she stopped asking. She listened instead. She learned which conversations were meant to be overheard and which weren't. She memorized phrases, names, locations. At night, she wrote them down. The dog remained her silent partner, reacting when she was on the right track, calm when she wasn't. The evidence no one wanted wasn't dramatic. It wasn't a single document or a shocking confession. It was consistency. The dog's reactions never contradicted the patterns Lily uncovered. They reinforced them. Together, they told a story no official report ever would. Lily finally understood why adults were so desperate to keep the past buried. Reopening it wouldn't just expose a mistake. It would expose a decision. A choice made by someone in power, protected by silence and repetition. The dog had been there when that choice was made. He had reacted then, just as he reacted now. As Lily closed her notebook, she felt something shift inside her. Fear was still there, but it no longer controlled her. She wasn't alone in this anymore. She had evidence, she had patterns, and she had a witness who never forgot. The truth didn't need to be loud, it only needed to be seen. The moment the lie collapsed did not arrive with shouting or sirens, it came with silence. A heavy, unmistakable silence that spread through the room when the dog moved. The gathering had been called to settle things once and for all. Officials framed it as a formality, a chance to reassure the family, to put lingering doubts to rest. The room was full of uniforms, pressed and confident, and a few civilians who trusted them. Lily stood near the back, small and quiet, her phone hidden in her pocket, her notebook pressed against her chest. The dog sat beside her, calm but alert, his body coiled with a tension she now recognized instantly. The supervisor stood near the front, speaking with practiced ease. His voice carried authority and warmth, every word chosen carefully. He spoke of honor, sacrifice, and closure. He repeated the story everyone had learned by heart. Accident, tragic, unavoidable. He smiled gently when he mentioned Lily's father, his tone respectful, almost rehearsed. Heads nodded around the room. Agreement settled like a blanket. Then he took a step forward. The dog rose instantly. Chairs scraped against the floor as people shifted. A handler reached for the leash, already apologizing, already preparing to explain it away. But before anyone could intervene, the dog moved decisively, placing himself squarely between Lily and the supervisor. His stance was firm, protective, unmistakable. No barking, no lunging, just a wall of muscle and intent. The room froze. The dog's eyes never left the supervisor. His growl emerged low and steady, vibrating through the air like a warning bell. Lily felt it in her bones. This was different from before. This was not a reaction to a word or a name. This was recognition in its purest form. The supervisor stopped mid-step. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across his face. He raised his hands slightly, palms out, smiling as if to reassure everyone. "Easy," he said lightly. "I don't want to upset him." The dog didn't move. Someone laughed nervously. Another officer tried to step around the dog, but the dog shifted smoothly, blocking the path again, keeping himself between Lily and the man. The movement was controlled, trained, deliberate. This was not aggression. It was containment. Lily's heart pounded. She felt every eye in the room turn toward her, then back to the dog. This was the moment she had been preparing for without fully knowing it. Her hands shook as she pulled out her phone, pressing record openly this time. No hiding. No pretending. "Why does he only react like this to you?" Lily asked, her voice small but steady. The question cut through the room sharper than any accusation. The supervisor opened his mouth, then closed it. He chuckled softly, shaking his head. "Animals sense tension," he said. "This is stressful for everyone." But the dog growled louder, stepping forward just enough to force the supervisor back. Gasps rippled through the room. Someone whispered the word aggressive. Someone else said unstable. Lily didn't flinch. She stepped forward too, stopping just behind the dog. "He doesn't do this with anyone else," she said. "Only when you're here. Only when your name is mentioned. Only when the place where my dad died comes up." The room buzzed with unease. Officials exchanged glances. The handler's grip on the leash tightened, but he didn't pull. He was watching now, really watching for the first time. Lily's voice grew stronger. "I have recordings," she said. "Videos, dates, times, his reactions, and body cam footage that doesn't match the reports." That did it. The supervisor's smile vanished completely. "This is inappropriate," he said sharply. "She's a child. This dog is not reliable." The dog took another step forward, forcing the supervisor to retreat until his back brushed the table behind him. The growl deepened, filled not with rage but certainty. The handler raised a hand, signaling others to stay back. Something in the dog's behavior had cut through training and protocol. This wasn't a threat. It was evidence. "Stand down," someone ordered reflexively. The dog did not move. The command hung in the air, heavy with irony. Lily felt tears sting her eyes, but she didn't look away. The dog had been ordered to stand down once before, when it mattered most. This time he refused. The supervisor's voice rose. "Get that dog out of here," he snapped, but no one moved. Phones were out now. Whispers spread. The pattern Lily had seen alone was suddenly visible to everyone. The dog's unwavering focus. The man's retreat. The history pressing in on the present. An officer near the front cleared his throat. "I need to pause this," he said slowly. "Something's not right." That was all it took. The meeting dissolved into chaos, not loud, but frantic. Calls were made. Doors closed. Procedures shifted. The supervisor was escorted out, no longer at the center, no longer untouchable. The dog remained still until the man was gone, then slowly sat, his body relaxing for the first time that day. Lily dropped to her knees beside him, wrapping her arms around his neck. He leaned into her, steady and warm. The lie had collapsed, not because someone confessed, but because it could no longer stand. The case that had been buried for years was forced open in front of everyone. And it wasn't anger or accusation that did it. It was a dog who refused to move out of the way of the truth. Justice arrived quietly, 10 years late, carried by reopened files, evidence boxes, and questions no longer avoidable. The building felt different. Voices lowered. Doors stayed closed. The story everyone had agreed on was cracking, and once a lie breaks in public, it cannot be repaired in private. Independent investigators reopened the case. Old evidence was pulled from storage and tested again using methods that hadn't existed before. The blast was no accident. The accelerant had been placed deliberately. Timelines revealed unexplained delays. Lily learned her father had survived the explosion longer than reported, long enough to be rescued if orders had not been changed. Vehicle logs and traffic cameras placed the supervisor at the scene despite official denials. Radio transcripts confirmed his voice issuing a fatal command, "Stand down." Officers finally came forward, admitting reports had been altered and questions suppressed. Fear and loyalty had protected a lie for years. The supervisor was arrested. Charges followed for murder, obstruction, and corruption. The truth was no longer a rumor. It was documented. The dog was reevaluated. Specialists found his reactions matched the uncovered evidence exactly. Where lies existed, he had reacted. Where truth remained, he was calm. His label was changed to one word: reliable. The dog did nothing wrong, an official said. Lily pressed her forehead to his tears falling. Her father's name was cleared. His death was reclassified. At the grave, Lily told him the truth had finally been spoken. Justice did not restore what was lost, but it confirmed something just as important. Lily had never imagined the unease. The dog had been right. Later, as they left the building, Lily felt it again, a tightening in her chest. The supervisor emerged from the shadows, desperate and unmasked. The dog stepped between them. When the man lunged, the dog struck first, knocking him back and standing firm. Officers arrived in time to see the truth for themselves. This time, nothing was dismissed, shaken. Lily held the dog as he pressed against her, steady and sure. She understood then he had not only protected the truth about her father. He had protected her, for years. As the supervisor was taken away, Lily knew her father had trusted this dog with his life, and that trust had been passed to her. The story ended not with answers alone, but with understanding. Lily learned that loyalty can survive fear and time. The dog was finally seen for what he had always been, a guardian of truth. Loss remained. Memory remained. But lies were gone, and justice, though delayed, had finally arrived. Dogs don't protect secrets. They protect the truth, until humans are brave enough to face it.